Pour yourself a fresh cup of awakening with Coffee with Wally, the podcast that brews enlightening discussions with a grind of the past and future. Join host and seasoned broadcast journalist Wally Wood of the Wood News Group and co-host Andy Valadez, the marine marketer and master strategist from Marketing Dynamics, as they explore the past, present, and future. Dive into a world where technology and globalization intersect with prophecy. Each week, Coffee with Wally links ancient and recent history to tomorrow, making sense of today's rapid changes through the lens of Revelation 13. Don't miss any episode. Visit coffeewithwally.com and subscribe for your weekly espresso of insight. Coffee with Wally, a fresh cup of awakening, awaits you. Coffee with Wally, where understanding our times becomes clear over caffeine.
All right, we're back. My name is Andy Valadez. I'm your co-host for Coffee with Wally. You're watching the Coffee with Wally web Xtra here with your host, Wally Wood. Hey, Wally, how you doing today?
Good morning, Andy. We're
You know,
doing well.
we always joke about we're back because we never know when we're going to be raptured, right? So I was always in the back. But I hear we have an exciting guest today.
Yes, we do. A fellow who apparently is not all that often interviewed. We're going to be talking to Andy Valadez, our co-host.
What? I'm really nervous. Before we came on, I said there's nothing like being interviewed by God's newsman, a strict journalist by nature. So I'm prepared for this interview, wherever it may go.
Yeah, we couldn't find anybody gullible enough to come into the interviews at this point. Word is getting around. So, but you've been working on some projects here of late, not the least of which is a book, your very first book, right?
Yes, sir. You've been helping me to dial it down into a poignant, relevant story. We retitled it recently. It was originally titled The Marking of Good, which has actually led to the conversation of a second book with the retitle now being Marine on Mission, Winning Battles in the Marketplace of Ideas. Through your promptings and insights, it made sense. So thank you for recommending that. And it's been a fun journey working with you on that.
Well, I've been working as your editor on this book, and it's due out very soon. And you'll be showing a copy of the cover of it here in just a moment. But I want to go back to the very beginning because, and not as a child, but as you came into this world of marketing, because this has been your entire life story for how long now?
Probably going back to age 6 or 7. Playing Waterburger with my sister when my dad built her a playhouse. He was really proud of that playhouse that he made for her, but he also gave me a set of tools for Christmas, which included a hammer, a saw, and a level. And so my sister and I were talking one day. We were kind of like latchkey kids back then. Parents both worked, to provide food for the table, and we're very industrious. But my sister, I convinced her into cutting a hole in the side of her playhouse so that we could play Waterburger, and we had such a great time. We were the blocks of the wood were the hamburgers, so we would take turns being the cashier and the customer. And of course, my dad wasn't very happy when he got home and found that I had, in his mind, destroyed this beautiful playhouse that he made for her. So he failed the inner entrepreneur in me back then. But it was
Wow. So moving forward, your choice to go into the world of marketing and advertising, did this predate your entrance into the military?
Oh, yes, sir. So as a young man, my dad was very hardworking and he modeled, he was always involved in the community. And in fact, he planted the seeds of entrepreneurship, allowing me to mow grass for friends and neighbors. And so even my sister and I would tag team. I was afraid to knock on the door. She wasn't. I said, look, if you knock on the door, I'll mow the grass. And get the profit. So that was kind of our deal. And so she got us some customers and we'd work hard during the day, or at least I did, because she had the easy part. I think, she just sold it. But we go to Dairy Queen at, after the end of the day and kind of celebrate, but it also helped fund like our interest in going to concerts and that kind of thing. So always had this idea to be an entrepreneur, not knowing that back then. Of course, in my studies, we're seeing that, a lot of times as children, you have these little indicators that can be missed, but, entrepreneurs are born maybe, or they're made sometimes if they discover that there's an idea that they want to champion.
Right. Absolutely. And so you went into the military when?
So I enlisted in 1988 after doing 2.5 years of college. I didn't plan to go to college for whatever reason. I was more enamored. I was, curious mind and all my different interests. From I had pets when I was young, played the guitar, just living. The American lifestyle back then was just rock and roll, and we see it on MTV and all that kind of stuff. So my mom was kind of impressed with my last year. All of a sudden, I went from being a C student to an A student, got my act together, decided, hey, I got to get into college or do something. And what inspired me to join the Marine Corps was in 1983, actually around 1982, there was a classmate of mine that had come back from the Marine boot camp, and we didn't really know each other that well, but we had a mutual respect for each other. And he came in his uniform. He was in his Marine Alphas, and I just had noticed a change in his bearing and his mannerism. And, it was just something that I wanted. Not realizing that a year later he would be dead because of the Beirut bombing that happened, where 241, mostly Marines, were killed in the barracks bombing, if you recall, of October 23rd, 1983. So I was 18 back then. My wife and I were dating, and we realized that the world was a dangerous place, and we were sitting ducks. It was all fun and games. When that happened, that was a wake up call for my generation, much like Vietnam was for the 60s, and of course 9/11 for the next generation. So five of my classmates wound up enlisting shortly thereafter. I went the college route. So 5 years later, I wound up enlisting, and I needed kind of a boost. I needed a little bit of inspiration. I kind of joked with my dad that I joined the Marines because I didn't want to take any orders from him after I graduated, and we both laughed at that. So he did, but I needed a little bit of discipline.
Yes, yes. And what era was it that you actually entered into the military?
Right. So it was a 4 year stint. And what got my interest is I wanted to fly Cobras back then. You remember the movies, Officer and a Gentleman and Top
Right.
Gun. That
Yeah.
was the biggest recruiting movie series, I guess, of all time. And the time period 88 to 92 was the promise that if I enlisted, that the Marine Corps would help to pay for my last year and a half of college. And it's a process. These programs you have to apply for, and you got to be selected. Well, thankfully, I scored high on my ASVAB because they do test your intellect, if you will. And so it definitely helps to have a good high ASVAB score if you want to get into a chosen field. But during that time frame, we also had a mini war, if you will. It was the Desert Storm, Desert Shield. It got really, really scary, but it happened so fast. I think the military did a great job of ramping it up and shutting it down pretty quickly. So anyway, did my service, and that was excellent training, being around excellent leaders, the discipline that the Marines provide, the legendary discipline you hear about. We win battles. They're very good at telling their story.
During Desert Storm, where did you serve? Was it stateside or were you overseas?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to be stateside. Of course, a lot of my friends and people that got called to Iraq and so forth were dispatched, and of course, same was we were preparing. So the thing is, they had us get ready. Like, you know what, you're going to be replacements, and they were forecasting heavy casualties. But my first year and a half, 2 years, it wasn't really that. I mean, it was more like a day job, from 7 to 4.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had a great XO, executive officer, a Marine, grunt, because you have combat Marines and all that. You have different levels of service that military people do, but he really was about preparing me for the future that I wanted to pursue. So he had me volunteer for a lot of different things. I was on the color guard. I drove generals. I was part of the auxiliary security force. So we, by that point, we're ramping up for potential terrorist threats. So we were trained by embassy guards under the cadre program. And so it was a volunteer group of about 15 of us that got trained on various weapons, from shotguns, pistols, and rifles, etc. But being a ready, mobilizing counter force, if you will, for the base, if we in a situation where we needed to kind of be an extra eyes and ears for
Right.
we had at the base as well.
Right. So you came out of the military when?
So, got to mention, while I was in the military, I went to Tulane University. So I had opportunity to go to basically an Ivy League school by special permission. The government typically doesn't fund a private school, but because of the nature of the program I was going into, there was an exception made. So I got out in '92, and by then I had been accepted to A&M. And while I was pursuing the officers program, I had letters of invitations to the Citadel, Arizona State, but my college of preference and choice was to finish up at A&M because I grew up in College Station across from the campus when I was a young teenager, et cetera.
Okay. Okay. And your specialty while in college, your major?
Oh, so my specialty in the Marine Corps was getting Marines paid unit diary, but my specialty that my interest again was in marketing, and so I do have a degree in marketing with an emphasis on promotions and public relations.
Okay. Okay. And so this is taking you through many different portals having to do with celebrities and the various different clients that you've had. Give us some background real quick, if you would, you started your marketing company at a certain point. So walk us through that real quick, if you would.
Okay. So out of once I got out of the Marine Corps, I was very mission focused. I knew that, time was ticking. By that time I was, my 26 years old, so I was older than most graduates, right? But it was a long journey. I tell my wife and I, we both put each other through college, and most people would have quit. you know,
Yeah.
I remember seeing the movie Rudy, and I was like, you know what? Rudy had a dream and he had a vision, so he wanted to play for Notre Dame, and I wanted to graduate from A&M. I was like, I got to graduate. So, but thankfully through the leadership and training, um, I was able to lead like my group. I had 8 groups that I was involved with. We competed against 103 others. And so in the competitive environment of the business school or the business side of college, they give you class projects or whatever, but it requires research, teamwork, casting the vision, et cetera. So with that being said, I was being prepared to go to work for corporate America. And I mean, that was really, once you got a degree, where are you going to work? And so I did a stint in corporate America for about 5 years, but was always chomping at the bit to start my own company. And be careful what you pray for. But my last job, I was working for a major, not a computer company, but it's a computer company, Toshiba International. They make industrial products, and I had just prayed, Lord, either shut a door here or open one, because I had been lobbying for the more of a marketing or true marketing focus for the products we were making. You had engineers designing great products and all. I was like, well, we got to create the product for the customer and get the feedback and all that, right? So got laid off the next day. So liberated, but how audacious, to tell the Lord, Lord, either shut a door or open a door. Well, be careful what you pray for. And as I was heading home, our first home was being built, and we moved in, and it was our first dream house. So I had responsibilities, and I was like, oh, whoa, my wife's not going to know how's she going to handle this, right? And thankfully, she had an open-minded spirit about it. But I started my company in 1999, Marketing Dynamics. The Lord gave me a really cool name, Marketing Dynamics. It's never been stolen from me, trademarked, or anything. And I've been able to use it here in Houston, major market USA, and nobody's ever, tried to take over the name, if you will, thankfully.
Right. Right.
But in that journey, I took my first client from 300,000 a year to 5 million a year. So he was like my major client for 5 years, and that gave him a taste for using my marketing talent. I say God-given marketing talent in a variety of different ways, from media to working with corporations like Home Depot. We want to putting together a program that is now national, and then working with radio celebrities to be spokespersons or buy radio time, TV time, etc. And back then, people weren't doing much with the internet. So we were one of the first to really start up utilizing websites and online video and social media when it first came out, like Twitter, etc. And so, just as a generalist strategist, was able just to observe all the different things that a business needs, in marketing. There's a 6 P's of marketing. There's a whole lessons there, but that led me on my journey. But even then, kind of not feeling unfulfilled. You can have success and you can be a great client, paid for all kinds of stuff for me to do, and cruises we went on, bought me a truck. I mean, very generous client, but I just felt like there was more to life. And you
Of
can have some
course.
there.
Yeah. Okay. And so you and I came together in about 2003 or so when I had the National Space and Technology Association here in Houston. I don't even remember how you connected with us or how you heard about us, but we connected and you became our marketing director for NSTA. And at the height of our popularity, we were known as the Technology Association in Houston from 2003 to 2013. We put on a host of conferences, conventions, seminars, workshops, after-hour gatherings involving the space and technology industries in the Space City, USA, and became quite stabilized until they closed down the shuttle program in 2012. And we tried to keep it revived, but it just wasn't to be. So the Lord closed that door, for us. And but you and I have been connected ever since then and been working close together. And we're working on some current projects, even this one here. Coffee with Wally was your idea, Mr. Marketing Man. And so what is your aspiration, being the fact that you're on this team? What do you envision for this particular thing that we're doing?
Yeah. So with the, I guess as I look at um, where most business owners are typically, they're not really business owners. They basically created a job for themselves, so the business owns them, and the
Right.
entrepreneur owns the business, right? And so this last 3 or 4 years, 5 years, kind of dial in like, okay, what am I really called to do? Like, what is my mission? The last, my book really covers the culture wars that we were involved in. And basically, I made a promise to the Lord after reading a book called The Market of Evil by Dr. Capellian. And I promised the Lord that I would use my God given talent for good, though it cost me everything. So it really wasn't about business per se, although I did have to pay the bills, but it was about how do I help the cause to push back on the darkness. So you'll have to get the book to read some of those stories and case studies. Now, coming off of that, I was like, okay, you know what? How can we cast the vision? Because all the books and trainings and you hear about all these different experts that tell you about 10xing your company, growing your company, systematizing your company, having a vision. Um, so again, with the question you're asking, what is the vision for Coffee with Wally, right? What
Yeah.
is the purpose? Why are we doing that? And of course, a lot of times is you stumble across something that you may have missed. Like I didn't know I knew you didn't drink coffee. All of a sudden, one day you're drinking coffee, and so I was
Yeah.
like, a fun, different way to approach a subject matter that you cover very well. Technology in the news, the Revelation file, all the futuristic things that you covered that we're living now. I mean, all the stuff that we've known each other, 25 years. All this, and I just remember like all the stuff that you talked about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and even before we met, is happening today in real time, right?
Right.
So we're doing is creating a model that also self funds. Like, how do you create a business model behind it? How do we get the message out? Because it takes resources to do some of the stuff that we're doing, like social media ads, advertising, merchandising, productions like this video, web extra, et cetera. But to me, it's all marketing, sales and marketing, right? And then you got the product. What's the product? Well, you and I are the product. So how do we did a photo shoot? Remember with Debbie Porter?
Yeah.
So I went into the studio, and of course, I've worked with a lot of photographers, and they're very talented, but they're not necessarily marketers. So a lot of times, you it's almost like a conductor with the orchestra. You have to conduct the instrument, right? The photographer doesn't know Wally that well, so my job is to help her and Debbie did an awesome job with our photography. That's Debbie Porter here in Houston, and but I had to fast track her. Like, here's Wally, here's his background, give her some resources so she can do a study on you. And then when we get together for the photo shoot, she can capture the photos that I couldn't capture because I'm not a photographer, but she could capture because of the direction. So
Right.
that's kind of my role, is to help navigate on the marketing side how we put this thing together.
Yeah. Well, I know that we have planned in the near future. You're going to be interviewing me, and we don't want to make this into a program of boring talking heads. It's the subjects that we talk about that really brings life into the context and content of the showing. And I've been gathering for all my life materials that the Lord promised me back as far as 1972 that He was going to put in my hands, that most people have never heard about or seen or witnessed. My specialty has always been in the area of end time prophecy and current events. And so some of the things we're going to bring to the table will shock a lot of you because you've never heard about these things. And I plan on incorporating that not only into our quarter-hour podcast, but also into these half-hour interviews. But we're also looking to bring in some very interesting people into these interviews. We've already done that thus far, and there's even more interesting ones on the horizon for us. I think that the overall, and please correct me if I'm off base here, but I think the overall goal here is to bring everybody up to date on how God is communicating to us people as the body of Christ and people who are not believers on how events are changing, how they're being shaped by ancient headlines called Bible prophecy, how it's all coming to a head now in this generation. And the people we're going to be interviewing, most of them, a lot of them are going to be celebrities, yet they have this drive that is deep within them that's pushing them into this new era with a message of their own. And I want to capture that part of their personality, that part of their giftings and talents, and merge it with what it is that God is trying to say through them to today's audiences to prepare us for the things that were prophesied in Scripture. I'm on record as saying that the Antichrist is alive and that he will be on the world scene in less than 5 years, within 5 years or so, but less than that. He's going to out-Trump Trump. He's going to be a man that is going to shake the world on his personality, his character, his expertise, his professionalism. He's going to be well balanced across every spectrum and is going to draw the hearts of the world to him like no other politician has ever gained. And the man is alive right now. And that is the essence, the push in me, is to let everybody know this is not just a world in which events are coming to pass. Jesus said these things were going to happen before he came back. And he was supported by prophets that go all the way back to the Old Testament that focused on the last days. And it's happening now. It's happening. And Jesus said it in Matthew 24. I've said it so many times that the generation that sees these things would not pass away, would not cease to exist until all had been fulfilled. And that included his return. Now, to bring this back to you in the few minutes we have, Andy, you have a focus in your book that was important to you when you put this book together. Bring that out real quick, if you would.
Yeah, so basically, Mary, my wife and I are going to celebrate 44 years together this month, April 30th. And you know the story about how I met her at Waterburger. So
Yeah.
burger theme here. But as a watchman Marine, the Lord wired me to be a protector, defender, leader, and then marketing being, it's a weapon used in the battle of ideas, right? The Marines are very good at telling their story. One of the few, remember the TV commercial, The Few, the Proud? We studied that at A&M in our public relations advertising courses, and that's one of the most remarkable commercials that had ever been created. And the Marines don't promise you anything. They just promise you an opportunity to become one if you can survive boot camp, right? So all this to say, you have said in the past that when the pundits prophesied,
the prophets are vindicated. Yes.
yeah, so I love to read, and you definitely have an awesome library of research, and you keep sharing some of the books that we should be reading, but the rails have been set up, right? And so while there's still daylight, which I think there is, we're not in darkness right now. We've been able to push back on some of the darkness, but as we're looking at the future with blockchain, artificial intelligence, all the different ways that they're going to have to protect and know that you're not fake, right? So if you look at Revelation 13, the voices can be cloned, personalities can be cloned, thumbprints can be picked up. At some point, they're going to require a chip. And once you take that chip, you're going to be in the blockchain, and that's going to know that they know that they know that that's you. Well, history repeats itself. There hasn't been a world leader like Nebuchadnezzar since the Old Testament, right? So there is a world leader that's coming that you'll see because it says he's going to be revealed. He has not been revealed yet. Although in history, you have people say, well, Napoleon was the Antichrist. Well, you didn't have instant information like you do today. You didn't have a chip like there's going to be today, which is already in the research and your research. And, people can go find out for themselves the microdot tattoos, etc. Not to be alarmed, but you know what? It's still daylight.
To stay alert. Just like Jesus said, stay alert. Okay.
Be wise.
All the empirical leaders that have gone before were prototypes of the Antichrist. And most of them had something to say about the future Antichrist. They're on record as having said it. Napoleon addressed it, and a host of others have. But there is coming that one leader. And always remember this: we're not phobic about Antichrist. We're focused because Antichrist is pre-Christ. And just look at the timetable in Scripture, and it'll tell you that when Jesus comes back, the Antichrist will be ruling the world, and he'll be worshipped by the world. So these are the realities of our times. And we're not looking to put people in fear. We're not conspiracy theorists. We are historians, reporters, telling you what is happening and fitting it into the model of what was to become. For a man to stand up and declare himself to be God, he's got to prove it. And in this sophisticated day and time of ours, the demand to prove it is more intense than it ever has been. But he will have at his disposal, at the push of a button, everything he needs to show himself to be omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent ever. And the technologies are such right now that he will know who you are, where you are, what you're thinking, what you're saying. The technology is already there. I'm not boasting on anything. I'm just telling you that that's the technology we now have. Andy, I'm looking forward to your book. You have two books now.
Well, yeah, we're going to co-author the other one. The marketing of goods is going to be now like a textbook for Christians to utilize marketing principles that, can help leverage these really good messages. Like you said, people that have a God-given mission, their message can be magnified if they use the principles of marketing. Even Jesus was aware of public relations because said to Peter, "Who do they say that I am?" So he knew that there was a word of mouth issues, and people get, you've seen the old telephone exercise where a message gets delivered, then it gets twisted as it gets to different layers. And that's what we're saying as well. The media has narratives, and there's all kinds of alternative media, and that's what we've talked about. Like, how do you sift the spit out the bones, but eat the meat, right? Get stuff. Listen to the rumors, but act on the facts. Because there's a lot of wars of rumors of wars. Even Jesus talked about that. We're living in those times right now. If you're not paying attention, right, every day there's something in the headlines that we need to factor into our decisions to navigate.
It's interesting. These are the most interesting of times because it's the wrap up of times prophetically. And this is what caught my attention at a very young age. And the Lord has shaped my career in the world of journalism to remain at the epicenter of these events, to know how to cull through the fake news and things like this, and how to get straight to the news elements themselves. And I can tell you that the insiders and, the scuttlebutt about the term New World Order, the architects are coming out. They've been emerging little bit by little bit, but now they're emerging in full fashion. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is the timing of it all. This is the purpose of it all. And I'll show you the New World Constitution, the New Earth Constitution, the New World Flag, and things of this nature. That is where we're headed. Well, we got to wrap it up now, but we thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your dedication to these programs. Spread them around. Get other people involved to watch these programs because they're going to get deeper, that's for sure. Andy?
All right. You've been watching Coffee with Wally, Web Extra, where understanding our times becomes clear over caffeine.